Before we start with the questions, I'd like you to think about some of the most commonly seen fractions and their corresponding percentage forms. Okay, starting with the first one. Okay, now the first one is a half, and I know a lot of you can tell me straight away that it's equal to 50%, but how did we actually get to that number, 50%? I'm going to show you the manual process. So I'd like to write half as a fraction of over 100. So what's that missing number at the top? Now, in order to come up with an equivalent fraction, you have to perform the action of either multiplication or division. So 2 times a number gives us 100. And what would that number be? Yep, it is 50. So I can do the same thing at the top. Times 50. 1 times 50 is equal to 50. So our final answer is 50%. So that's how we came up with that answer. So I'm going to show you that technique once more in the next number. So a quarter, let's convert that to a fraction over 100. What can you multiply 4 by to reach 100? Did someone say 25? 25 is correct. So we do the same thing at the top. 1 times 25 is 25. So that can be rewritten as 25%. Okay, I'm not going to do the same thing for the rest of the questions. You can try these yourself if you don't know what the answer is straight away. But these are some of the fractions that you should be able to convert on your own straight away. A fifth is the same as saying 20%. A tenth is the same as saying 10%. And the last one, 1, it's a whole number. So remember that any whole number, well, in particular this 1, can be written as a fraction of a number over itself. I've picked 100 because I like to create a fraction over 100. So now I can rewrite this as 100%. Let's have a look at question 6. In question 6, I'm going to first start with part B. In part B, you have the fraction 5.5. Okay, so the way to think about this problem is to ask yourself, what can you multiply 5.5 by to get itself? So I'm multiplying 5.5 by a number so that I can get the original value back. Now, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to just change the appearance of the number without changing its value. So what can we actually do to fill in this gap? Does anyone have any suggestions? Okay, so usually you'll multiply by 1 to get the original number back. And that applies with any other number that of your choosing. So it's just not just 5.5. You could have any number multiplied by 1 to give you itself back. Now the reason why we do this is so that we can change the appearance of 1 to something that allows us to bring in the percentage symbol. So as you saw before, we can write 1 as 100%. Okay, so they're exactly the same. So I've made this change, and because I haven't changed the number, 100% is still 1, I'm expecting to get 5.5 back. Okay, so we're just going to be playing with the calculations on the left hand side and see what actually comes up. So the next step from here, I'm going to leave the percentage symbol on the side because that's going to be part of the answer. And we're just going to calculate this value here, 5.5 times 100. So let me open up the calculator. Let's clear the screen and shift fraction to get the 3 boxes up. You must get the 3 boxes up in order to insert mixed numerals. So 5.5 times 100 gives us 550. Notice that I have not put in the percentage symbol because it's actually part of our answer. So there's no need to put that in. And if you did, the calculator will probably show up 5.5 again by itself. So that's something you might like to try. So we have our answer that is equal to 550%. Now, if you don't want to do this via the calculator, you can try a mental technique, and that involves taking this number apart. So the mental technique is to consider 5.5 as 5 plus a half. And we saw that 1 is equal to 100%. Therefore, you can expect 5 to be equal to 500%. It's just 5 times larger. Now, half is equal to 50% from our previous calculations. And altogether, that makes 550%. So you can do this mentally without using the calculator if you're familiar with the conversion of these simple numbers. Let's now have a look at question K. In question K, we have number 1.6. And we're going to approach this in the same way as we did with part B. Okay, so what you'll ask yourself is, what can I multiply 1.6 by in order to get itself? Okay, and the answer will obviously be 1. And the other way to write 1 is simply to write 100%. And leaving the percentage symbol on the side, we're going to calculate 1.6 times 100. Now, if you don't want to use a calculator, we can always move the decimal point to the right 2 places when we are multiplying by 100, and that is going to give us 160. Let me write that in blue. Okay, 160%. And obviously you can do this in the calculator as well. And the last question that we're going to do for this question 6 is part L. But in part L, we have the whole number 17, and we can use the same technique, multiply by 100%, which is still going to end up with 17. Okay, but because we've now introduced the percent symbol, we can actually write our answer as a percentage. Okay, so leave that percent symbol there. 17 times 100. So the decimal point for 17 will be right there, timesing 100, 2 places to the right, filling with zeros. So you are going to get 1,700% as the answer. Pause the video now so that you can finish the rest of question 6. Question 7. Express each fraction as a percentage corrected to decimal places. Use your calculator because some of the answers requires rounding. Let's have a look at part A. 6/11. I'm going to multiply that fraction by 100%. And then I'm going to leave the percentage symbol on the side and calculate the number. Go to your calculator and input the fraction 6/11 times 100. And you can see that your calculator will give you a fraction answer back. And this is just the standard way of displaying numbers on some models. Some calculators may display this in decimal. So to get the decimal form, we just press the S to D button. And there it is. Now you can see there's something interesting about this number. It looks like the digits 5, 4 repeats itself again and again until it gets to the last set where it says 5, 5. Now what has happened is that the calculator has rounded the last digit because it can't display any more. In reality, this is what we call a recurring decimal, and the digits 5, 4 actually repeats infinitely. So we're going to just write down 5, 4 dot 5454. Now you could have done this rounding off if you know what you're doing, but I'm going to just show briefly what is required in rounding. 2 decimal places mean that we only want 2 digits in the final answer in the decimal region. So I'm going to count my 2 digits from the first digit in the decimal region. So there's 1 and that's 2. And I'm going to draw a dotted line after that just to remind myself that I want the number to end there. And the next thing to do is to look at the immediate digit to the right. Don't worry about the 4, don't worry about any other digits that come after. Only the digit that is right behind the one you're rounding off matters. So this number 5, you're going to ask yourself, is it closer to the bottom end or the top end of the number in our decimal system? So our decimal system is a system of 10 from 0 to 9. And so what number is 5? According to our rounding laws, any number greater, so that's the greater symbol, or equal to 5 means rounding up. So that is telling you that this number here is closer to the ceiling. It's closer to the next step up. So the actual answer you will write down would be 54.55%. We have rounded this digit to the next level, which is 5. Now I'm going to give you an example of when you don't round. So another example. So if I had a value, let's say 50.3025, etc., etc., and if I would like to round that number, then I will look at the digit right after the digit that I am to round off. Now that is a 2. It is less than 5. So it's closer to the floor of the number, so to speak. Hence, this number here is approximately equal to 50.30. Okay, this is called rounding down, where you're keeping that last digit the same value as previous. Okay, so that is a little bit of a revision on rounding technique. Okay, let's get back to the question. The next one that we are going to do is part C. Okay, in part C, we've got the fraction 7/8. If we times that by 100%, what is that going to give us? Let's use the calculator. 7/8 times 100 equals to this number there. Now I'm going to press S to D, and I've got 78.5. Do we need to round anything off in this answer? The answer is no, because we actually have less decimal places than is specified by the question. So we've only got one digit in the decimal region. So that's actually one decimal place. But if you really want to write your answer to 2 decimal places, you can just add an extra 0 at the end to make it 2 decimal places. Pause the video now to do the rest of question 7. In question 8, you're going to use a mix of skills that you have learned previously to convert between fractions, decimals, and percentages. I'm going to start you off with a couple of examples, and you can continue the rest of the questions yourself. Now, to convert between decimals and fractions, it's very easy to do this on the calculator. There are 2 ways to go from a fraction to a decimal. So let's have a look at part B. Now we have the fraction 7/10. The fraction bar means divide, so what you could technically do is to input this as 7 divided by 10. And when you press the equal sign, the answer comes out to be 0.7. You can also take advantage of the S to D button to switch between the 2 forms. So by putting it in as a fraction, press the equal sign to enter it into the calculator. Press the S to D repeatedly will change between the fraction and the decimal. So this would be 0.7. Let's clear the calculator. So if I go from a decimal to a fraction, I can do exactly the same thing. 0.4 equals. Press S to D. The calculator will show you the simplest form of the fraction, which is 2/5. Some of you might be thinking 4/10 at first, but once you simplify the fraction down, it reduces to 2/5. Okay, I'm going to leave these 2 empty boxes for you to work out because you've just done 2 questions on this technique. To go from a percentage to a fraction or to a decimal, let's recap on that. Okay, to go from a percentage to a fraction is actually quite easy because, as you know, a percentage is just a fraction over 100. Okay, so 20/100. Now, sometimes these numbers could be big and not easy to see what they simplify down to. So use your calculator to do the simplifying work for you. So that gives us 1/5. And to go from a percentage to a decimal, instead of writing it as a fraction of over 100, we're just going to perform that division. 20 divided by 100. 0.2. And that is our decimal. You can now pause the video to finish off question 8. Question 9 asks to arrange each set in ascending order. This means to arrange in increasing order. You might have a question that asks you to arrange in descending order. That will be to decrease in order. So going from largest to smallest. Now in this question, we're going to go from smallest to largest, but it is difficult when you look at numbers that are displayed in different forms. It's not easy to compare their relative sizes. So as a routine, we always try to convert the numbers into the same form. And the easiest way to do that is to convert everything into a decimal. You might choose percentage, but I think personally it is easier from a calculation point of view to just move everything into a decimal. Let's have a look at part E. So in question E, we have 5 on 6. We have 70% and 0.44. Now obviously the last number can just stay as it is. We're now going to do a couple of calculations. So to go from a fraction to a decimal, 5 divided by 6, or you can do 5 over 6 equals, and press the S to D button. So we can see that it's about 0.833333, and it's another recurring decimal. So the 3 actually doesn't stop. It only stops because the calculator has run out of display digits. So I'm going to put a little dot above the repeating digit just to tell me or to remind me that this is a recurring decimal. Now the next number is 70%. If you know what it is in decimal, you can write it straight down. Otherwise, we're going to just perform a simple calculation on the calculator. 70 divided by 100, 0.7. And of course, that is just 0.44. Now we can compare these values much easier because they're all written in the same form. So the first thing we're going to do is look at the first non-zero digit. So that's 8 in a 10th place value. This is a 7 in a 10th place value, and that is a 4. Which one of these is the smallest digit? Obviously it's 4. So I can start by writing that number down. My first number in the list is 0.44. Of the remaining two, which one has the smaller digit on the 10th place value? And it's that one there. So that will be my next smallest number. The remaining one is 0.63. Okay? And so I'm going to write their corresponding numbers. So the answer is going to be 0.44, 70%, 5 over 6. Let's try another one. Question F. In question F, we have 35%, 0.36, 2.5. And I'm going to do my conversion now. 35 divided by 100 gives me 0.35. That is simply 0.36. 2 over 5 can also be done by pressing to divide by 5 on a calculator. So that gives me 0.4 as the decimal representation. Now let's put these in order from the smallest to the biggest. You can see that by comparing our place values, we've got two numbers here that have both 3 in their 10th place value. So we now have to look at the next place value to make sure that we catch the correct number. That's a 5 in the 100th place value. That's a 6, which is smaller. Obviously, it's this number there. So you can see that what we have is actually in the correct ascending order. There is no need to rearrange this. I can simply leave it as that is. So this is the correct form. And this question is actually in the correct order. Please pause this video to finish the rest of question 9.